Hello, everyone. Welcome back to session number one of our new six-part webinar series. We're excited to kick things off today. We have a lot of information to cover with a lot of wonderful panelists. So before we kick things off, I did want to do a little bit of housekeeping and let folks know the best way to listen to the audio here. You have a couple of options on GoToWebinar through computer or phone. Just use the portal in GoToWebinar. The most important thing is questions. This is an open panel, so we definitely want to hear your questions. Please submit them using the questions panel on GoToWebinar, and we'll save some time at the end to address our panel live. Finally, the question that we get most often is, are we recording this? Absolutely yes. We are going to send a recording after, most likely by the end of today, and you can view this on your time with your staff. I want to turn it over now to Mike Alec, President of Management One.
Excellent. Thank you, Nico. Thank you. And thanks to our panelists for joining us. And thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to listen. I'm just going to speak briefly about Management One for those of you who may not know Management One well. We exist really to provide financial security for our clients, for our affiliates, our network of affiliates and analysts, and of course our employees. That's our mission. How we do that is to provide merchandise intelligence and education with a focus on independent retailers. Those are the folks that we serve. We try to do everything we do with the values you see on the right side of the screen: generosity, courage, curiosity, adaptability, commitment, and collaboration. Recently, we've gone through a reflection process internally and have decided, sort of on reflection of what's going on in the world and taking a close look at what's going on in our own company, that we're going to commit to increasing the racial and ethnic diversity inside our company and our network of people, and to contribute in whatever small way we can to improving racial and social justice in the country. For us, it's not a political thing. We just sort of view it as a justice and equity issue. And what we also see, frankly, is that being more diverse and more inclusive is going to make us a stronger company. So that's a little bit about us. Let's sort of move on to our panel now, which I think is really the exciting part and why everybody's here to talk about reimagining sourcing in the COVID era. So we have a really great set of panelists here. We have a retailer, a really leading retailer, Adrian Weissman, the owner of Evelyn and Arthur, which is a chain located primarily in the Southeast U.S., centered in Florida. She has some great insight into retail. And then we have 4 people whose business it is to connect retailers and vendors, which is really what we're talking about today. So we have Tommy Fazio, who has been he's been a retailer, who's been in the trade show business, and is now with the digital marketplace New Order. We have Kelly Helfman, who is part of the senior leadership team at Informa Fashion, so running big chunks of the leading trade show Magic. Carolyn Sprouse, who's an EVP of Emerald Expositions, which, as you probably know, runs some of the largest retail-focused trade shows in the United States, ranging from ASD to Outdoor Retailer to Surf Expo to NY Now, which is, of course, the New York Gift Show, and many others. And we have Lauren Cooks-Levitan, Chief Financial Officer of a really fast-growing digital marketplace known as Fair. So I think it's an exciting panel, and I'm excited to sort of take you through this presentation with them. So we go to the next slide, Nico. Nico?
Next slide should be up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think I'm not seeing it. So okay, so one way to think about sourcing is to really, and about any business problem really, is to sometimes just take a big picture perspective and think about things differently. So this comment here on this slide is really about, okay, the COVID-19 catastrophe, and let's just call it what it is, also has an opportunity in it, right? It's a time for us to hit reset, to rethink everything we do about how we buy, how much we buy, and what we stock and what we carry. So, and frankly, I really like the thought that it's not just about the health of our business. It actually also is the health of our planet if we can reduce waste in the supply chain and get the goods to people, to consumers that they really want when they want them with the minimum of waste and the greatest sort of happiness. So we go to the next slide. So purchasing in the new reality, right? There are, the questions are really the same, right? We're still going to be talking about what are we going to buy, from which vendors, how much, what's our open to buy budget, when do we want shipments to arrive? And then it's about how are we going to find those goods, where are we going to get them, what's that mix of old and new vendors? And then it's about largely about the negotiation and communication with vendors. So there's some negotiation, but hopefully there's more collaboration. Given the cancellation of trade shows and the curtailment of business travel, that question of how will I find my goods is probably key. And then, are my vendors going to be able to deliver? What are my vendors doing? What's happening on the vendor side of things? So we go to these questions are the same, but a lot of the answers are different, and that's really where we get into the sort of substance of we'll get into the substance of the topic here. So we go to the next slide, Nico. So the first big question is really who and what, right? What are we gonna buy from which vendors? So a recurring theme, and of course this is Management One's business, so we're gonna harp on it a little bit. Hope you'll all excuse us. Is to use your data, right? If you're a Management One customer, of course you have access to your analyst, your affiliate, and the reporting we provide you. But if you're not a Management One customer, you still have a ton of data in your POS systems. Leverage it, right? Database decision making is always the right way to go. So I'm not going to go through every bullet point on this slide, and I'm going to let the panel dive in a minute, but I will sort of hit the first bullet point, which is that this is probably a good time to think about your vendor assortment. We do find among M1 clients that a lot of our clients tend to buy a little bit too wide and not deep enough. So this is probably an opportunity to look at who are your underperforming vendors and think about culling them out. And we have created a vendor scorecard that you can find on our website that can help you through this process. But let's start with Adrian. So Adrian, what are you doing in terms of analyzing vendors and categories and sort of figuring out what you want to carry? I know that private label is pretty important for you. How are you thinking about this sourcing and vendors and categories in the new reality?
We are going through the vendors with the score, card and discussing who really is important. And, sometimes a vendor used to just be our parent resource, then they went into sweaters and you start carrying their collection and they may not look well overall because some of the product in their collection doesn't sell, but other parts of the classification do. So that's really going into it a little bit further. And then we went through and decided which vendors for right now we don't need, those fringe vendors that you didn't necessarily make a lot of money on, but they looked good in your store. With people not necessarily coming in as much, we need to do what we can do best with pictures and what we could buy into and work with our manufacturers on with the relationships we have. And we do private label. So there's two ways to do private label. One way is to just change labels from a manufacturer that will just change your labels, or our in-house person will change your label. But a lot of what our private label is merchandise that we manufacture, and we have it so that it fits our particular customer. The waist is in the right place, the arms are the right length, it all has, the bust line is correct, and that requires more units. And that's a little bit trickier these days with how much you have to purchase.
Got it. Yeah, great. So Tommy, you've been a retailer, you've been at trade shows, now you're part of a digital platform. What's your perspective on how retailers are reanalyzing their assortment and their vendor list, and what should they be thinking about?
Well, right now is the time for everyone to reimagine what their store is going to look like in the new future. But analyzing with the data and with your sell-throughs on what you sold and what you see trending now, and that could be very different. The interjection of private label under Adrian is really important to sort of round out that mix. But it's really important to start to analyze what are we looking for right now? What are customers looking for right now? And really going through the marketplace, either on a digital platform or digital trade show, or just through your general data of brands, and really feeling what's right for your customer now. There's a whole casual movement. There's a whole movement in health and wellness and home and beauty. There's a huge movement into a different type. We were all very much designer driven. We were all very much collection driven. We were all very much, let's go out, go to work, do all that. Now it's very much about feeling comfortable, being home, and being satisfied with that, looking good, feeling good. So it's really important to sort of, really investigate your vendors through all different channels. I mean, we at New Order have a digital platform that you can investigate. Informa has trade shows which are going virtual. So there's lots of opportunity there.
Great. So Kelly, what are you seeing in terms of consumer trends and customer needs? And I know Informa's invested in some tools that retailers can use. Obviously, masks is a whole new category that nobody really thought of as a big item at retail. That's changed. But what else?
Yeah, I mean, definitely I oversee the sourcing show, and we have a lot of our vendors now doing PPE. We see a lot of our brands on the trade show floor and the digital platform taking that on as well. And so that business is booming. PPE is huge. Accessories to go with masks, so a chain around your neck to hold your mask, and so forth. We do have a lot of resources that are super important for stores to take advantage of. When you are a registered retailer for any trade show, they are always offering you free education, free resources, etc. So something you might pay, let's say, a trend business for their reports, a lot of money, we give those out to our registered retailers complimentary digitally. So you don't have to necessarily be at the physical event. It's really important to open your emails and take advantage of those resources. So for example, Fashion Snoops, WGSN, sometimes to be a member of these things could be quite expensive. So we take that expense on for you, and we will send those trend reports to your emails as a perk of being a registered retailer with us. So it's important that you do open those emails, because there could be some really juicy content in there that you could utilize to run your business.
Great. So, Carolyn, I know you pay, in your role with ASD and then previously working in sourcing shows, you pay close attention to international trade and trade disputes, and obviously there's tensions with China. How are you thinking about advising customers about, goods sourced in China and paying attention to where things are ultimately made, and should they think about diversifying? What are your thoughts around the sourcing in that perspective?
It's a really good question.
Diversify.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing already, though, is a little bit similar to what we saw during the recession in 2008, is that everybody needed to diversify, and obviously sourcing in particular is really about relationships and building those over time with trust and so forth, and it's really hard to do that digitally. However, it can be done, and our events, just like Kelly's, provide a lot of data, matchmaking opportunities, and so forth to help any retailer that's either having supply issues, which is going to continue to be a challenge for all of us in the next year or so, and also looking at sourcing more locally. A lot of people are needing to get product, and planes. There's only cargo planes coming in. People are looking at Mexico, more now than ever. And so I think using some of the resources that the trade shows offer, as well as just your trusted partners, I think that's really the key, is people that you may have considered competitors in the past, people that you can lean on now.
Yeah. Yep. So before we move on to the next slide, I just one point I want to hit is that, one opportunity that may come up in the current environment is to obtain vendors who wouldn't sell to you in the past, right? You might have had a vendor that you wanted to get into your store, and for whatever reason, maybe, competitive constraints, the vendor wasn't available. Now is probably a good time to revisit vendors you couldn't obtain. So Nico, let's go to the next slide. So now, sort of dive into sort of how much and when, right? So we've talked about categories and vendors. Now, sort of, how should we think about open to buy budgets and timing? A consistent theme we've heard from our clients at Management One is to think shorter term, really, and to think in smaller increments in terms of making commitments. It's basically the mantra is move fast and stay flexible. But Lauren, you have, I think, some data that might be relevant to the topic of this slide.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. FAIR has been surveying our nearly 100,000 retailers on a biweekly basis. And most recently, the feedback they've been giving us about how they're thinking about the upcoming holiday season is consistent with what you just said. 53% of them most recently said that they expect to buy less inventory for holiday 2020 than they did for holiday 2019. And 58% of them say that they plan to wait until closer to the actual selling season to be purchasing that inventory. So we agree with you and what Management One is saying, that this is about flexibility, about agility, and creating ways for retailers to feel like they can de-risk those purchase decisions, having the ability to make those decisions closer to need, possibly buying with lower minimums, the ability to return goods, the ability to pay for them later. Those are the tools that we're trying to help them with. And we do think that flexibility is really critical.
Right. Okay. Yep. No, that makes total sense. It's really, these times, being flexible is key. But you want to be flexible. But then when you do place an order, of course, you want your vendors to deliver and to listen to you and to do the right thing. Adrian, have your vendors been reliable during this period? Have you had any issues around delivery times or vendors not following sort of the instructions you've requested, or the order timing you've requested?
Yes, we had an issue where, and I was going to suggest this, that if you have orders on hold, that you sent out an email at the beginning of COVID and said, please, don't ship, hold all orders, and this is including fall, confirm that they're not shipping or that you want what they're shipping, because we just got an order to us that was not confirmed and we basically thought it was canceled. So that was an issue. But we'll work it out with them. The other thing I can suggest is that you should get your vendors, if you don't already, to get you their available to sell list, because it's the best thing. And I think probably New Order might have this, and Sure does, or they'll update it. But if you can get what's available to sell, that way you can buy closer to when you really need the goods, or fill in or see what's out there to help your assortment.
Yeah, I think that's great. And Kelly, I think you were telling me that there might be an opportunity sometimes for to purchase excess inventory that brands might have because they've had cancellations, and that maybe become available to other retailers.
Yeah, correct. So, during COVID, a lot of our brands had canceled orders from really big box retailers. And so they did get stuck with some inventory, sadly. So the vendors are open to doing deals to move some of that extra inventory they did get stuck with. So it's worth asking. They're more open than ever, I'll tell you. The ones who have not been interested in dropship or, opening packs and so forth. So this is the time, like you said, Mike, to really ask those vendors maybe who you couldn't work with before. And they do have inventory to work on some discounted deals with you as well, which would be great margin builders.
Great. Yep. So one of the things that, we're hearing from our clients is that, summer is probably going to last longer than it's ever lasted. Not necessarily because of global warming and heat waves, so that could be a factor, but in terms of selling merchandise, that people are wanting to get outdoors because outdoors is outdoors is safe, right? When you're out in the wilderness with just your family, you're safe, and you're getting out of the house, you're having some fun with your kids, hopefully. So Carolyn, I mean, is this resonating with you? I mean, you have an Emerald Surf Expo, an outdoor retailer. And I would think those categories would be doing well.
We are very blessed at this time to have some really great categories of business that are exploding, particularly in the outdoor category. We just ran a virtual event for OR last week. It was pretty successful. It's going to continue through the end of August, so happy to share a link with you if you'd like to check it out. But the categories that are doing really well right now are cycling, hiking, anything to do with camping, and home fitness, water sports, and of course equipment that goes along with that are all trending. We have a lot of data from NPD, which is a source that Kelly and Mike talked about, and I can send you a link to that that really gives you a broader representation of the categories that are trending. At Surf, it's really some of the same that we see in fashion in general: resort wear, basics, casual wear, and then of course hard goods like surfboards, skateboards, wakeboards, and stand-up paddleboards are selling super fast. And we also at Surf and also our swim collective events represent a large percentage of the swimwear category, and that's another category that's actually doing really well right now at retail.
Great. So before we move on to the next slide, one of the things that I just sort of want to sort of hit is that these are scary times, and it's possible to be scared into paralysis. But that's really exactly what you don't want, right? You don't want to. This is not the time, from what we've seen, to stop buying completely, because freshness does matter. You need to be careful with your quantities, but you need the right balance of seizing opportunities versus keeping risk down. So while you want to be cautious, you don't want to be paralyzed. So now let's move on to sort of how and where to buy in this new world we're living in. So maybe you could go to the next slide. So there's a bunch of tactics that are traditionally used by retailers to source goods. The ones that are working today, so trade shows, of course, most of the physical trade shows are canceled and have gone digital. Digital wholesale platforms are really coming into their own, platforms like Fair and New Order, and a host of others. There's been a real burgeoning of them. And of course, people are also using a lot of other digital tools. They're sort of DIY digital, right? They're using Zoom, they're using web search, they're using email, and they're using social, and they're putting all these tools together. The good news is we have this technology, and there's a lot of options. The bad news is that people are missing trade shows, from what I've heard, and it's kind of it's a strange situation. But so, Adrienne, like sort of big picture, like what have been your sort of go-to tools that you've been using at Evelyn and Arthur?
We've been doing Zoom calls and seeing the lines that way, and then having the line sheet or the new order on another screen so that we could follow along as we're looking at live merchandise, which has been terrific. We have great relationships with our vendors, so we like to have their input as to what they think is a trend or what's going well, and hear them actually explain the fabric. It can't be too long, but it's just a nice thing to have. And then we've also had, in certain situations where we weren't familiar with the fabric, having them send samples of the line to us, and we send it back to them just so we could actually see in person some of the things we liked. And that has been great. Just if somebody's doing a Zoom call, make sure your internet is working and we don't keep freezing as we do. But otherwise, that's been the best way. We won't go to trade shows right now, even if they're local. Florida's not so good. So we really like the Zoom aspect of this, and then following along on New Order or on the line sheets.
Got it. Okay, great. All right, so let's I think now we'll sort of dive into some of those main tools, which are trade shows. So we can move on to the next slide, and we'll get what I'd really love here is, so most trade shows are currently closed. There are some exceptions. It looks like the Atlanta market will happen in person for apparel, although only with permanent showrooms, none of the temporary trade show booths. The Dallas Market Center is operating for now, and of course they have multiple categories. But the reality is most are closed. And people are kind of missing them from what I hear. Beyond the ability to touch the merchandise, right? People are missing the in-person networking, that sort of ease of kind of scanning the show floor to see what the trends are, that ease of sort of happening upon a new vendor, and the social aspect. On the other hand, I've also heard some expressions of relief actually about less travel. So it's really all changing. But what I really like to hear about from Kelly and Carolyn is what's going on with trade shows? Like, how do you see them evolving, and where do you see them going? So maybe just start with Kelly. Like, what's going on with the trade shows that you're responsible for at Informa and other retail trade shows that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So Informa Markets, we oversee Coterie, Intermezzo Project, Magic, Mecam Americas, and so forth. And sadly, we did postpone Magic and to end up having to cancel it because we just didn't feel it was going to be safe for our attendees. Coterie canceled as well. So we have had to pivot to go digital, which we're really excited to partner with New Order on. With that being said, we're taking a really close look at Q1 and our February Coterie and Magic events. Sadly, we just heard that the Consumer Electronics Show has been canceled in January, which is the largest show Las Vegas has. So, at this point, we're just keeping a really close eye on what's happening in the world. With that being said, when we're back to face-to-face events, we believe in that business. It is key. We are in this business to be shopping and touch and feel. So we believe moving forward that our future is going to be face-to-face events, and then the digital will absolutely complement it. So we'll be right. So maybe you'll use a digital platform like New Order to discover prior to going to the show, maybe use it to do your orders at the show and then wrap up some orders after the show. You'll use it in between the main shows you go to. I do think that there is an opportunity to consolidate some of the markets within the fashion segment moving forward. I don't know what that looks like today, but do we need 7 fashion women's markets moving forward? I don't know. The business has really changed. And I think that, Coterie and Magic and Project being our primary events is what we're going to focus on moving forward. And then doing this hybrid of face-to-face and digital. We're so excited to come back to face-to-face. Like, it kills us. It's, as you said, Mike, it's not just about the buying, it's like the networking and seeing what's trending and getting all those incredible educational seminar events and the networking and fun stuff, right? So we're excited to get back, and hopefully we can soon. In the meantime, this digital event business is pretty incredible. And I think Tommy and I will get into that a little bit later, but what you're able to do on these platforms is actually going to be pretty comparable to the physical events. Like, all the seminars and education you know and love will also live there in addition to just discovering and ordering.
Excellent. So Carolyn, what's Emerald doing in terms of both your physical shows and your digital platforms?
So listen, we recognize that really the future includes a hybrid, both digital and physical strategy. We recognize that buyers are buying both online and offline, but they really come to market to be inspired. Obviously, the number one reason anybody goes to a trade show is to discover new products and build those relationships with new brands and really understand the story behind those brands. So, but we also know that they buy year round, whether the trade show is going on or not. So it's really our job to answer that dual responsibility to our retailers and build a 365-day experience throughout all of our major events, so that in the future, it's similar to what Kelly just said, that they'll prepare and they'll look and they'll discover things online, and they'll be more prepared for the live event. But that's really the premise behind all of the strategies that we're building. And we know people have Zoom fatigue, for example. I know Adrienne mentioned that she's doing a lot, looking at lines via Zoom. And one group of buyers I talked to, for example, talked a lot about how brands used to send them more things ahead of like the trade show or ahead of in-person meetings, and they're not getting a lot of that kind of interaction with brands right now before a Zoom call, for example. So anytime that we can create the opportunity for them to still touch and feel product ahead of those Zoom meetings, I think is a really opportunity to connect while we're in this unprecedented environment.
Yep, yep. So, Adrian, when trade shows reopen in person, will you go back, or are you going to stick with your digital tools?
Oh no, we'll go back to it. We'll go back to a trade show. And it's safe and fabulous, because it's important to see what's out there and what's trending. I mean, the minute you walk into a trade show and you walk on that floor, all of a sudden you see, oh, it's speckled sweaters everywhere, and then you find your vendor that sells the speckled sweater, or it's a new sleeve, and you just see that, and you don't see that if you're just looking at one vendor. So the vibe in the building is great. So we will definitely go back to trade shows and be face to face with people.
Excellent. So Lauren, so Fair is a pure play digital marketplace. What's Fair's perspective on physical trade shows? What do you see the physical trade shows role in the context of a sort of hybrid world?
We've always believed that it is a hybrid world, and this pandemic has probably just sped up some of the ideas that were already percolating out there in the environment, that people have been looking for ways to extend their buying occasions year round. They're looking for more data and insights to support their choices, and they're expecting that the same familiarity and ease of use that they've come to know in their own personal e-commerce choices, they want to be able to do that with their business, with respect to fast shipping and free returns and things like that. So we've always thought that there was a role for both. What we've been doing is working with our customers in this pandemic to build tools on top of the existing platform that emphasize and leaned into the interaction and engagement that they really are missing from those physical experiences during this time, and trying to help them get as close to the products as possible. We think this year more than ever, the need for efficiency is really critical. And so we've given them, an online wholesale event to concentrate some of that into a kickoff to the event, to the season. But we really do think that once that 2-day event is over, this is about following brands and coming back for future live streams and allowing them to get that data and use that data to make good decisions. But we do believe this is, trade shows will come back. Everyone is excited for them to be able to come back and to be able to interact and have all the kind of in-person networking events that the other speakers have spoken about today. But we do think this is shining a light on the fact that there's a lot of very rich data available that's helping retailers make more informed choices. That's what we built Fair for, to help them make those choices and use all the data from the thousands of retailers that are shopping there to buy things that they are confident will sell in their stores.
Awesome. So that's probably a good transition to sort of talk more about what are the digital marketplace and digital buying options that are out there. So Nico, let's go to the next slide. So Tommy, I know, there are lots of digital B2B marketplace platforms out there for retailers to look into. On the right side of this slide, you can see just some of them. But New Order is one of the leaders. But New Order is doing two things, if I understand correctly, these days. You have your existing New Order platform, but then you're also doing something with Informa. You have a partnership with Informa. Can you talk about those two things and how they fit together?
So, we've really focused on how do we immerse the retailer into the brand's DNA virtually. And we are actually working on 3 arms to New Order currently, and one of it consists of retailers. But we'll talk about the digital platform first. We spent a lot of time and a lot of our efforts on building a real integrated virtual showroom where it invites a retailer to come in, visit a brand, understand the brand's DNA, but have a really visual, virtual experience of the brand's DNA. So they feel like they're immersed in the showroom. The showroom comes to life. You can shop from racks. The lookbook comes to life. You can shop from the lookbook, and then the products obviously are in the shoppable cart, the shoppable version. What we also felt was this combination of, digital and physical is very important. Currently, right now, we obviously can't do the physical, but so we partnered with Informa for all of their trade shows and some other trade shows around the world to really help bring those trade shows to life. Because right now we understand that a lot of retailers are going to need the trade shows, depth and breadth of brands to really do a lot of research and a lot of scouting for new brands to fill their stores and make their stores feel new again and fresh again. And how can they really find these brands? So we partnered with Informa to really bring their digital experience to life. And with Informa's marketing arm and all of their retailers, and with New Orders retailers, I think we can bring a marketplace together for 2 months. We've opted not to have the trade show run for 1 week as they normally do, over 3 days. We've opted to keep the trade shows open for 2 months, September and October, to allow brands to allow retailers to really take their time, investigate brands, and really find what's right for their stores. So in the partnership with the trade shows really enhances what New Order is doing on a digital platform. Our virtual showrooms are really quite compelling, easy to use. It really brings a brand's product to life. On the other arm, we're also supporting large retailers like Saks Fifth Avenue and Nordstrom to help them to really assort their stores and really filling in what's over assorted, really kind of understanding what's over assorted, what's under assorted, and what's right for each of their stores now.
Got it. So, just to repeat those dates. So you're going to be operating from September 1st to October 31st, the Informa New Order partnership. And is there going to be one sort of digital show for the coterie sort of New York women's world and a separate one for the Las Vegas Magic World, or is it really one show? How do you navigate inside if you're from different segments?
You enter into the Informa marketplace and you'll be able to click on whether it's Magic for the contemporary women's business, or if it's Project for the men's business, or if it's Coterie for the contemporary and advanced contemporary business, or whether it's Mecom Americas for footwear, or Children's Club for children. So we segmented the verticals. So when you go into Project, I'll say Project because I'm close to that brand. When you log into the Informa trade events and you go to Project, you'll be immersed in the men's world. You'll have all the marketing and all of the brands and all of the happenings that happened physically at Project, but in a digital world. And I think Kelly can expand upon that a little more.
Yeah. So when you're a buyer inside our digital events, you can go back and forth. So let's say sometimes you buy women's trend lines and you also buy women's contemporary. You can go into the Coterie digital marketplace and search up those brands you know and love that would potentially normally do Coterie, and then you can hop back over to Magic where you can find more of your affordable fashion brands. And then in all of, everywhere you go, you'll have opportunities to discover, learn, and so forth. And we have a lot of suggested curated content, very editorial, that will give you suggestions. So let's just say a Mother's Day gift guide, and we'll highlight like our best candle companies and stationery companies. And we'll give you a lot of suggestions and on-trend editorial that way. Then we will also have what I was saying, all those trend reports that you can access, all the educational content, amazing speakers, and those will be accessible throughout the 8 weeks as well.
Got it. So, Lauren, so New Order and Informa's venture is really focused on the apparel, footwear, and fashion accessories categories. Lauren Fair, I know, is present in the fashion and the apparel industries, but you also serve other merchandise categories. Can you just talk a little bit about, kind of what kinds of product categories Fair serves, and then maybe a little about other sort of key features of the platform that you'd like retailers to be aware of, without it being too much of a pitch, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, we do have diverse categories and brands that we're trying to connect those brands with the retailers that we think will benefit from those assortments. We've got over 1,000 apparel brands, over 2,500 home and lifestyle brands, over 1,200 specialty food brands, and that continues to evolve. Someone said earlier, the mass category exploding. We see that too. As our retailers are demanding it, we then try and find additional brands who can support that. So it's quite broad. As this whole world changed and shifted under everybody's feet so quickly, we really did look to our retailers to see what they wanted, and I think it comes down to three things that they're saying they're asking for. The first is real-time insights. The second is flexibility, and the third is tools to make them more financially successful against a macro backdrop that frankly is just really uncertain for all of us. That pointed us to add additional tools on what was already, a digital first and robust digital platform. Those tools were live streaming, the ability to access our terms and return and order closer to the holiday season, and then concentrated promotions. We know they want to get a deal because, again, it goes back to how do we help them become more financially successful against this crazy and hard to read set of conditions. So that's what we've been focused on.
Got it. Now, do I understand correctly that Fair offers retailers the ability to have payment terms that for purchases they make through the platform?
Yes, that's right. A lot of people who had tried to support this world, we had seen them really leaning into the brands and not really thinking about what do the retailers need. And what we've seen is that what the retailers need is the ability to have the confidence that what they're buying is going to sell. And again, that's where that machine learning model and data really comes in handy. But the working capital needs are the most critical. And so retailers have access to credit terms on Fair, typically 60-day terms, and those credit limits will vary based on the information that they provide to us about how long they've been in business, how large they are, and what their needs are. And then those tend to grow over time.
Excellent. So, I won't go through all of the different platforms that are on this slide here. There are lots of digital marketplaces for various categories. There are more every day. At Management One, we're kind of keeping track of them. And so if you out there in the audience have questions about any of these brands or about which digital marketplace might be right for you, we'll happy to share any insights that we might have. I do know, we do have a lot of customers in the apparel sector. Fashion Go, if you're in the fast fashion sector, you're probably already using Fashion Go, but it's one to be aware of if fast fashion is part of what you do as a retailer. So I think and again, Salad Plate is of course gourmet food. There are lots of them. Adrian, do you use any of the marketplaces on this page? I think you mentioned New Order. Do you use Jor as well? How do you perceive the sort of strengths and weaknesses of working on these kinds of platforms?
We use whichever platform the manufacturer uses. So the manufacturers who are signed up with New Order, that's how we use them, and who uses Jor, we use Jor. We had a great presentation by somebody from New Order, one of the manufacturers who uses New Order, that really explained what New Order could do for you, and that was fantastic. So if a manufacturer is using New Order, they should do their own webinar and explain how it works for them. The other ones we don't use as of yet. But again, we're using it more when a manufacturer uses it as opposed to just going into and setting up an account.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to the retailer vendor relationship. Obviously, using trade shows and digital platforms to find vendors, to connect with existing vendors is a big part of what you have to do to source product. But the rest is, it's then also about a relationship. So, one of the key messages for me is that, it is just that. It's a relationship. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be nurtured through communication, through empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, finding win-win solutions, sharing data, even, staying in touch. So, I'll make one other point before I turn it over to the panel, which is that, if you're alert to opportunities, you'll probably be talking to new potential vendors for your store. You're going to be evaluating them, but remember, they're going to be evaluating you too. And in the current environment, the way you present yourself digitally is more important than ever. So your website is not just for consumers. You don't need a sophisticated e-commerce operation, but your website and your social media presence should say professionalism, should say I understand who I am and who my customer is and what my positioning is. You want to inspire confidence from the brands that you think about doing business with. You want to inspire confidence from potential sources of financing. It's not just about consumers. So make sure that your digital presence you're putting your best foot forward. It's not just about selling. It's about what you look like when people find you online. Adrian, what are your thoughts? Is anything changing about the way you're working with vendors in the sort of new world?
It's really interesting because when the recession happened, the manufacturers, I didn't feel were as desperate, I hate to say that word, as they are right now, or feeling the brunt of this. We were able to do a lot more consignment because I was like, we have stores, you have merchandise, let's see what we can do. They're not as, I don't see the flexibility there in terms of product. What we're working with them more is our discounts, getting delayed payments, working that way as opposed to getting the merchandise returned. They don't want the merchandise back in their warehouse. That's for sure. They have no other way of selling it as well. Even people who are in majors or they have their own websites or their own stores are finding it very difficult to move product. So but definitely stay in touch and talk. I mean, it's all about relationships with your customers and with the manufacturers.
So Kelly, what are your customers doing in terms of sort of how those relationships are working? That's different.
Sorry, Mike, you went out for a second. What was the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. So what's changed in the way your customers are interacting?
Yeah. So honestly, we've seen a huge uptick in our vendors calling all of their stores. And I think hopefully everybody has had those calls and the stores are really appreciating it, and they're touching base and they're really open to working with the stores. They're open to drop shipping where they hadn't before. They want to, like I said, get rid of some of that inventory and merchandise. So they're calling to check in on their stores and see how they can work differently on the payment terms. I think it's really important. And just to touch base on what you had said, Mike, as a store, your digital presence is so important. I really see the importance on the consumer side, right? So when you take a look at somebody's social media page, it's really a glance at kind of your magazine cover, and it's important for you to be on brand and kind of resonate with a certain tribe. And so I think that's important. And when a vendor looks at you too, if they don't see that professionalism and that engagement with your own consumers, then they might pass. So I am seeing a lot more pressure around engagement, digital presence, as well as just checking in, right? We all need to check in on our customers. The vendors need to be checking in on you guys. You need to be checking in on your shoppers. And as trade show organizers or digital platforms, we need to be checking in on all of you as well. So it's more important than ever. And I think that just doing these webinars and engaging on Facebook Lives or Instagram Lives, getting really creative in this time is going to build that loyalty, and not asking people to buy something, but just really talking and being there for one another. So then when we do come out of this, we have that loyalty and that trust to want to do business with one another.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we could talk about for hours actually about this topic, but I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. So Nico, do we have some questions from the audience?
We actually do. I have been answering a couple of them digitally, folks looking for resource links. I will say one other thing too, the chat window in GoToWebinar, Carolyn was nice enough to add a couple of the links that she was talking about. So please head over there and view those links. So let's get to the questions. Kim Linball is asking, and this could be a very long-winded answer, so maybe briefly, if we could have the panel describe, how do you begin the process of manufacturing your own line of goods? Kim would like to add a private label collection to her store.
Adrian, I think you can answer that one pretty well.
Adrian, I think that's you.
Yes. So there's, if you want to actually manufacture, there are people in New York or your own vendors that you deal with will do quantities for you if you know what you want to, how you want to work it. So it's really, it's more of a one-on-one question, but sometimes the minimums are high, and it would be nice to have a group together who would do a collection together and you would have your own name in it. But it's, if you have it's best to go to your manufacturer that you're working with now and say, do you do private label? You know, will you do things in a certain color for me, in, you know, a certain length pant for me? And then you could find out what they have available, and then you make a label and they put it in there, and you run with it. It's been very successful. Your margins are better, and you don't have the competition with everybody down the street who could be carrying the same line as you have right now. That's
Excellent.
the start
Great.
of it.
Thank you. This next question is for Tommy. Erica Eichhoff is asking what she characterizes as a silly question. There are no silly questions here. She's
There are no silly
asking,
questions.
exactly, is there a tutorial for new orders? She says she's ordered from a vendor on there before, but she's not 100% confident in navigating the site.
Yes, there is, and I can get you that. I can get you that link and put it in the chat.
Thank you, Tommy.
Good morning, everybody. This is Julia Day. I'm with the NPD group, and it's fantastic to be here with all of you. I wish we were in person, like outdoor retailer.
We're going to have to mute one of the mics.
You can also email me directly, tommy@neworder.com, and that's NUORDER.com, and we can for sure set you up with a training module.
Excellent, thank you. This next question is from Marta Gasca. How do we deal with vendors that want us to place orders now and commit to spring 2021 delivery?
As a
Anybody?
fellow retailer, I say wait, or everything, because they want you to have your crystal ball and you to be able to forecast what's going to happen in the future, and you need to partner with them that they can look in their own crystal ball and not have to do that. I think that between the recession and this, it's like we were expected to put in our orders so they could make their cuttings, and there was no liability to the manufacturer because they wouldn't have any. There's not a lot of overstock. Now, we can't afford to do that again, in my opinion. They have to take some of the risk and decide this is good and that this is what they're going to have available to sell when we want it. Because,
Excellent.
we thought Florida, but 2 months ago, Florida was looking better and our business was opening up, and now COVID came back in strong and we died again or got quieter again. So, you don't know what's going to happen in 3 months from now.
That is true. It changes week to week.
Yeah, and I've heard some of our clients talk about negotiating, rights to return at least a portion of their goods in case of government mandated shutdowns or in case other things happen, right? So which maybe if you can work that out, that means you can take deliveries, but you get potentially the possibility of being able to return those goods if things really go sideways. But obviously, this is part of the relationship in the negotiation.
Absolutely. This next question, again, I'll start with Tommy, but if anybody else has their own input. Cornelia Spore was asking, since we mentioned data throughout this entire presentation, it's one of the mantras of Management One, which POS system do you feel serves clothing retailers best pertaining to information, like integrating with New Order and Jure and QuickBooks? Or is there one?
The SkyPad is the one that we integrate with the most as far as a sell-through technology. Is that what you're asking?
SkyPad is one for
POS
New Order
systems,
directly.
you know.
POS systems.
Yeah, that wouldn't be something that we POS system wouldn't be something that would integrate or be a part of New Order.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at Management One, we integrate with a lot of POS systems. You know, as far as New Order integration, I'm not sure. I mean, I can tell you what we see among apparel retailers. We see a lot of Shopify. We see a fair amount of Springboard, which is now called Heartland Retail. We see a fair amount of Vend. Larger companies we see using NetSuite a lot. You know, it's a big conversation actually, you know, what's the right POS for you? And, you know, we'd be happy to have the conversation, but it's probably longer than we have time for completely, but we're happy to, you know, sort of engage that conversation one-on-one.
There are,
that's what I was going to say.
Needs, there's specific needs to your retail store. So there's lots out there.
Yeah, I think that's a best served one-on-one question. If Cornelia could reach out to us, there's
you know, but there are some other good ones. You know, there's Run It. Run It is a good one. Has a lot of apparel customers. Rick's, RICS has great customers. So there are a lot of good ones. You know, I think it's just about, it kind of is about analyzing your specific needs, and we're happy to have a one-on-one with you.
So I want to be respectful of the panel's time and our attendees' time. We are at 11 o'clock. If you don't mind a couple more questions, I can put a couple more out here. Let's see. We do have, sticking on the digital platform theme, we had so many up on screen. A couple of folks are asking if there are good platforms out there for gift and children that weren't shown on the screen.
I think that, you know, I think that we have Children's Club, which is our children's platform digital event that will be in partnership with New Order. So you basically can go to magicfashionevents.com and then register for Children's Club digital event, and you can shop all of children's footwear, accessories, gifts, and apparel there. And then Fair, you'd have quite a bit of gifts as well, right?
Fair does, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Fair really started with gifts, and that's our biggest category. Children's is one of the fastest growing, along with apparel and food and beverage and pets. So lots of options for you there to see, you know, literally the thousands of innovative brands in those categories.
Yes, and we're in the process of launching our online platform for New York Now, which is primarily gift and home. So more to come on that in the next couple of weeks. Also, Atlanta Market does a really good job with their new online platform that they launched. So that would be another one that I looked at. And then ASD also has quite a lot of gift and toy and that type, all in the affordable price range.
Excellent. The next question here would be subjective. I'm not sure if anyone has heard this. Somebody was saying Fashion Go was one of the platforms that we put up on the screen. Somebody was saying that there could be an identity theft issue. Has anyone on the panel heard anything like that?
I mean, our security permissions are so tight, there would be no identity theft on New Order. I'm not sure about fashiongo.net.
I've never heard anything of that nature either. You know, I'm not aware of anything.
Nor am I.
I would say that's definitely worth a look on Google for sure. And then our final question here, since there's no way we're going to be able to tackle, I think there's about 20 or 30 separate questions. Let's just go with the final question, and anything that we didn't answer on this live session, we're happy to do so one-on-one via email. So the final question, we can start with Kelly. Is there a pulse for fall, winter on customer buying trends based on what we've seen so far? Do you have any predictions?
I wish Kelly could start. Kelly actually just texted me. She had a hard stop and had to drop off. So maybe someone else could take that. Maybe Carolyn or Tommy or Adrian, you could pick up.
It's funny because we just had this conversation internally the other day. For fall, winter 2021, we really do see retailers and brands. We're almost transitioning to where we've been talking for years about buy now, wear now, and buying closer to the time frame when the customer is actually going to wear the product. So we feel that that's going to be a trend in a really big way for fall winter 21.
Great.
Excellent.
This is Lauren. I can weigh in on our views of what's next, and we agree that this is all about flexibility and buy now, wear now, and buy now, not just even in the apparel categories, but in all categories, having that agility. We'll continue to get a lot of information from the retailers, and we'll post that in our blog content that we post regularly, and we'll feed those predictions out based on the input that we're getting. So I'll paste the blog URL in the chat so others can start participating and reading about what others are telling us.
I know they want the
Excellent.
buy now, wear now, but that doesn't answer the question of when you have to place the order, because that goes back to my point of the manufacturer having to invest in the inventory without knowing who's purchasing what.
The question of buy now, wear now,
absolutely right.
when the purchasing actually should happen for a delivery in September of 21, correct?
Correct. It's when you're going to buy it. I mean, you have to place the buy. Yes, it would be great to be able to August it and buy it in July and get it in September, but that's not what manufacturers want.
Yeah, obviously they want the lead time to actually and the protection to actually manufacture the goods to ship it in September. When do you feel you as a retailer, when would you want to buy fall 21? That's a good question for a retailer. When would you want to? Then I can hopefully answer for the brand. Is it May, June, or would you rather go further like July, August?
One of our attendees is weighing in saying 3 months
July.
out.
Yeah, I think June, it's got to be June, July.
Right, but I don't know how long, but manufacturers need lead time to manufacture, and so I don't know that gives them enough time. As private label, we know how long the lead time needs to be for that, so it would be very interesting. So the buy now, wear now is fantastic, and that's why we love available to sell lists, because it's what they have in stock right now.
I think that the vendors that are willing to take the risk, and I think a lot of vendors are talking about taking the risk to be able to ship, 30 days out. I don't know if they're there yet. I know there's been tons of conversations and how we react as a digital platform for buy now, ship now, as opposed to pre-booking. It's really on the vendor's side if they're willing to take that risk, and that I can't answer. Sorry.
We're seeing the same thing on Fair. The fastest growing apparel brands on the platform are definitely more oriented toward very short lead times and available to sell, which I know for the comment of how do I deal with my private label, obviously that's just a different situation with longer lead times, but we are seeing that the brands that are doing the best on Fair are those that have shifted some of that risk and are taking the inventory on, and it's allowing the retailers to buy closer to need.
Yeah. Well, so I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. I think this has been a great discussion. We could, keep it going, I'm sure, for a long time because it's fascinating. But just to respect everybody's time, we're now 8 minutes over. So we'll wrap it there. So I'll say thank you to all of our panelists. It's been really great having you. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you to our audience for listening. And thanks to Nico and the rest of the Management One team for helping put this together. And Nico, we have the next in our series is coming up next week. Is that right?
Correct, August 4th at 10 a.m. Everybody will be receiving an email invite, so we're looking forward to seeing everybody next week when we're diving deep into retail data.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.